Django's upset. Hold on. I got to go out and see if that's UPS or something because people in the driveway. Stop trying to eat the UPS drivers, Amazon drivers. He's trying to eat some little Mexican lady delivering Amazon packages. Hey everybody, welcome to Shooting the with Yankee. As always, I'm Yankee, so let's start shooting. Tonight's topic is, what do you think is the most concerning threat that you might face in modern America? When you decided you were going to carry a gun, what was one of the things that was forefront in your mind, the threat that you might actually encounter? And we're not saying this is likely, but it's one of the ones you consider to be, if you do face a threat, it's most likely going to be this. Is it a mass shooter, a lone gunman that comes to a public place or your work? Is it you're out in public and someone tries to run over a bunch of people with a truck? Is it, you're downtown and there's a protest and it turns into a riot and looting? Is it just theft or personal attack against yourself, a carjacking, a mugging, or, something like that? What do you think is the greatest threat you face? And, you use that to choose your carry gun, basically. For me, there's a couple of threats that really scare me. Not scare me, but I don't want to find myself in. One of them is, I don't want to be in a public place and some crazy gunman comes in, starts shooting up the place. Maybe you're towards the back, you're in a bathroom, you end up getting in a back room or behind a counter. I don't want to be one of those people texting saying, this is happening and I'm stuck. I can't get out. He's getting me next. Tell the people I love them. That. I don't want to ever be in that helpless situation. I always want to be able to fight back. And that's why I carry, because I don't want to be in one of those situations. That's probably the thing I think about more than anything else. But in modern day, there is one threat that's probably made me think a little more about it than I used to, and that is car attacks. Any idiot can go rent a car, can rent a truck from Home Depot. 15, 20 bucks, they can come and kill a lot of people. We just saw it in Canada. Was it a dozen people are dead now because of that? So I worry about that. If I was somewhere with my kids or something and someone was bearing through the crowd with a truck, is my gun going to penetrate that windshield if I get a shot at them? If they're going past me towards a bunch of kids, is my gun going to penetrate that door or that window or side glass? Is my round going to go through it, maintain integrity, and maintain trajectory to where I can actually have a chance of getting that foot off the gas pedal or getting veered off course because he's injured? That's one of the things I think about more than anything nowadays. I think is, will my gun penetrate hard barriers? Will it maintain its integrity? Will it maintain its trajectory? Because I've tested a lot of guns through windshields in my life, and one of the main things you see is the bullet either becomes a splatter pattern on the other side, which isn't going to stop somebody, not immediately, or it just veers completely off track, or just bounces off the windshield entirely. So you got to know those things, and I pay attention to those things, and that's one of the things I'm most concerned about, because anybody can get their hands on a car, and they're probably the most dangerous weapon that we allow to roll around on the streets. So that's my answer. Let's go and see what other people have to say over here. Ghost Shadow said, random teens committing carjacking in town. I have been the victim of a carjacking before, or I should say attempted carjacking. My video, How My Gun Saved My Bacon in Birmingham, Alabama, recounts that story. And I'll tell you, I was very happy I had a gun that night. So that is a concern. And you think I'd think more about that, but I just don't leave my house much nowadays. So, and I'm very careful what I'm driving. I'll tell you that. I don't like going out at night anymore. Just if it's dark, I don't need to be there. I'll wait till tomorrow. Gummy Wuzzle said, so the so-called sheepdogs. Ugh, yeah, there's someone to be afraid of. I'm wary of those people. I'm not fearful of them because I think most of them try to do the right thing. But I am wary of them. You don't want to be involved in a shooting situation like there's a mass shooter, you go to take him out, and some guy who thinks he's the protector of the masses decides he's going to take you out before he knows the whole story. Same thing with law enforcement. But I think most sheepdogs have good intentions. I think maybe they overvalue their own importance and overjudge their abilities, but I still think they have good intentions. The Bat Biker says there are many threats, but what is most likely in my situation is if someone shoots up a government office, since I work at them quite often, most are softer targets than people might think. Oh, I know they're soft targets. One of the things you do a lot when you're doing the adoption and stuff of kids, you go to a lot of government agencies. Most of them, if they have any security whatsoever, it's some 80-year-old guy with like an old 38 special on his hip that I don't think's loaded, even if he has a gun. So yeah, they're not exactly hard targets. Johnny Mandrick said, "Can you please explain the topic?" I did. I explained it after he said that. Nenny says, "Road rage or robbery?" Road rage is. I don't know if I would say it's more common nowadays. A lot of people say road rage is so much more common nowadays than it was 20 years ago, and I'm like, is that true? Or is there just more documentation of it? Like every time it happens, someone gets it on a cell phone, posts it, even if there's no, when there would normally be no police involvement, no charges filed, nothing, because it was just a he said, she said situation and no one got hurt. Nowadays, everybody gets it on video, and it makes it seem like it's a lot more common. I don't know if it actually is. Where was I? Edgar Cortez says, "I remain concerned about the government attacking its own citizens for political reasons and oppressive government. I hope I'm wrong." I'm not as worried about a direct outright attack on citizens by the government. I more worry about smaller attacks where the government instigates violence between two groups to maintain division and to maintain uncertainty. I think that's more likely. Or if they can't initiate the violence, they'll commit the violence in a way to make it look like the other group did it. You know what I'm saying? So like a false flag kind of a situation. I'm afraid they would do that. And I worry a lot about that. I don't want to be the victim of that. It's kind of like how when a white supremacist will do vandalism and they'll paint a pot leaf and make it look like it's hippies, or when Antifa will commit vandalism and they'll paint a swastika so that it'll look like conservatives did it. They try to make it look like the other side to fan the rage against the other side. And then since the other side's not doing the violent things they want them to do, they'll do it themselves and accredit it to them. And I think the government would be very much into that. That was Edgar Cortez. Mr. Furley says, "Wayward youth seeking infamy with little to lose." Mass shooting situation. That's usually the situation. Someone who's been bullied, been marginalized. Their life is miserable, so why live it? But they can at least go out on top while getting revenge on a lot of people, which is why I always love when these interviews afterwards, they're like, "Yeah, we knew he'd shoot up. Yeah, we bullied him all the time." And I'm like, well, yeah, there's the problem. Maybe if you would have said, this kid was kind of marginalized, so we went out of our way to make him feel, accepted and welcome, and, asked him to eat lunch with us and, said, "You're weird, but, that's fine." Maybe if you'd done that, maybe your friend's still be alive. I get in trouble when I say that. People are like, "You're blaming the victims." And no, I'm explaining the situation. If the original victim hadn't been a victim, the people who are later their victims probably wouldn't have been. Motor Racer Chris says, "The first ab crunch I have to do in the morning." I don't think that's a physical threat. You're putting on your socks is not a threat to your personal. Well, a lot of people, it probably actually is a bigger threat to their life than anything else they'll face in the just putting their socks on, because it's hard. I used to do it standing up. Now half the time I got to sit down to put my socks on. I'll get told every now and then, "Sit down while you're doing that. You're going to fall." And I'm at that age where falling's not a good thing. I already broke my hip once. Fractured my hip falling on the ice out here. Don't want to do that again. Officer Tater Hater says po because they are never held accountable. That's a very dangerous and delicate situation, because if you end up shooting back at a policeman because here's the thing, if a policeman puts your life in jeopardy for no just cause, I believe you have every right to end that policeman before he ends you. But because of the way the system is, even if he's clearly in the wrong, you're going to be treated like a criminal. So that's a bad thing. I don't like that. I worry about that myself, because I have kind of a reputation around here as being anti-police. One of my friends I know that is, well connected to the police department's like, yeah, they know who you are. They know what car you drive, because you're anti-police. And I'm like, I'm not anti-police. I'm anti-police corruption. It's sad that they don't see a difference. So yeah, I worry about that too. And every time they pull me over, which I've been pulled over pretty much every other time I leave the house, it's always, do you have any guns in the car? Where's your carry permit? Every time. Because it's like they want to catch me without my carry permit so that they can be like, all right, now you're dangerous. Practical Bacon, I carry a P20X compact a lot, so according to some, the gun itself is probably the biggest threat, but probably a random mugging or road rage incident. A lot of people are worried about muggings and road rage incidences. Just be glad you weren't in the big cities in the late 80s, early 90s. Then you'd be really in danger of those things. Gummy Wuzzle said empowered fascists. Well, yeah, they are dangerous. I will say that, especially when they think they're in the right. When they think they have a right to go out, I'm a little like, we're going to go out and police these minorities because we have a right to. We're going to become the authority in town, even though we have no basis for that. Any side that does that is usually pretty wrong. Because if you're going out there some people because of the color of their skin or because of their political affiliation or because of their religion, you're probably not the right person to be doing that. C.L. Thomas says, I'm LGBTQ plus. All of them? Wow. I thought you'd be like one of them, but all of them, that's a lot. So I've always been a target my whole life, and now I'm old, so I'm an even easier target. That's why I started carrying as soon as I could. I agree with that 100%. I don't understand why people who are gay or a minority or anything that they would be hated for, more so gay, because gay is still the one thing that a lot of people are, they can preach shit about. These big preachers could be up there like, gay people are evil, we should hang them, and their church isn't immediately burned to the ground. If they said that about black people, their church would be burned to the ground. So gay is the new black these days to some extent, because you can still hate on them openly and no one will really hold you that accountable. So I don't understand why, especially gay people, don't, every one of them ain't armed. It should be the fucking, what would be a good word for that? I was going to say the Chartreuse Army, but I don't know. Mikey D says, crazy people. I seen a guy beat a block from PD. I seen a guy beat a block from PD. I don't know what that means. Am I missing something there? Maybe I'm missing something. I don't get it. Mams says two concerns: fascist and robberies. Economy is bad. Yes, some studies suggest when the economy is bad, crime gets worse. Some suggest merely doesn't have that big of effect. I think it's just maybe just because overall a lot of people have bad economy. We've gotten to where when the economy gets bad, it doesn't really make it much worse for most people because they already had it bad. But yeah, bad economy. Fascists again. We got fascists twice now. Squirrel and Wesson said biggest likely threat around my area is a methed out druggie getting bold and aggressive and looking to fuck around and find out. That's a possibility. I worry. I kind of avoid. I've always found that usually the drug addicts and the whatever's on the street are of no real physical threat. But you never know when one's got a knife or something and is really, really being paranoid. I don't think they are usually deliberately out to hurt someone, but their paranoia, causes a lot of violence. Ghost Shadow, 13 to 16-year-old doing a carjacking broad daylight. They do that. Well, a lot of it's gang membership stuff. I was downtown at Dante's Inferno one time doing outreach. We had been doing outreach down there, and I stopped in to watch some friends that were doing a show at Dante's Inferno. And I came out, and I guess maybe they recognized me from doing the outreach earlier because I was working for Willamette Bridge programs, doing some street outreach. And they decided I was going to be their target for gang initiation. So I'm going to get in my car, and I see in the glass that there's someone coming up behind me with a fucking bike chain. And I whirl around. He still manages to swing the chain. Kind of, and it catches me on the forehead, just barely scrapes me. And I kick his ass into the bushes. And everybody else that was watching takes off. And then he eventually gets up and takes off. But I knew exactly who he was. I'd talked to him before. So he ended up getting caught. And then I ended up getting an infection on my forehead, and it swelled up like this big. But they'll do stuff to get into gangs and everything else. And he was about 14, 15 years old. Paul B, getting caught up in altercations. That can happen too. I've got video of the time I had to get between that guy and a woman and their baby when I was adopting the kids, and we were at one of the child care places, child services places. I think that's still on my channel, that video where he came in, tried to grab the baby, and she started screaming. He doesn't have custody. He can't have the baby. And he's screaming, "It's my kid. I can take it if I want." And she's like, "I have custody. I've got a restraining order." So I was finally like, well, I'm going to get in the middle of this. I don't like getting in personal things, but I was just like, you ain't taking me. If you want to lay claim to the baby, stay right here. I'm calling police. When they get here, they'll decide you have custody or whether you have a restraining order. And then he was being threatening and stuff. I was like, do all you want. You're not taking the fucking baby. And even less so now. Once had a road rage situation, and thanks to my concealed carry, it de-escalated rather quickly. It can, that's for sure. The only thing I don't like is when I see these road rage situations where guys go up to someone else's car. I just saw one about an hour or so ago. He goes up to these kids' car. He didn't like that. He thought they were following too close to him. So he stops in traffic, gets out and goes around to their car. They get out and beat the shit out of him because he comes up and bashes on their window. They get out. It turns into a scuffle, and they beat him to the ground. And then once they beat him to the ground, they start to walk away. He just pulls his gun. I'm like, nah, you don't get to do that. That's a bullshit move. Django's upset. Hold on. I got to go out and see if that's UPS or something because people in the driveway. 9mm Mike says, I worry about packs of Chihuahuas. That's why I only need to carry 9mm. Well, that should work, but it's going to be hard hitting them. You might want to start carrying birdshot because they're fast. And we got one last person weighing in here, Gummy Wuzzle, who says the Pink Pistols is a real LGBTQ plus gun group. Yes, I know. I actually tried to interview them here locally, and they never got back to me. When I was doing videos like that, they never got back to me. But that's why I think gay people should basically be a little private army because they're definitely discriminated against. But that's it for today. Thanks everyone that weighed in. I do appreciate the participation and love hearing the varied ideas. How about you all out there in YouTube land? What's your opinions? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to weigh in on one of these topics in person, come to our live chats. We do them every night at 6 p.m. You're welcome. Everyone's welcome. Come in, discuss the topic we're talking about, and then stick around for the open chat afterwards, because after we finish this, we always do an open chat where the topics are up to you. So come on in, talk about anything you want to talk about. Hope to see everybody again tomorrow. Until then, remember, always carry and stay safe until I see you again.